Jeremiah Boucher, a commercial real estate investor with over 20 years experience. This show is designed to help you build your business, become a better real estate investor, and help you see opportunities that will keep you ahead of the competition. This is Finding Your Edge.
Everybody, we're Finding Your Edge with Jeremiah and Marty, and we are very, I guess this is an amazing thing. We have Diane, who, if you read the book, Finding Your Edge, she plays a big part in the success of the operation. So Diane, welcome.
Thank you.
So let's go into it a little bit. So I guess, how did it start? You were picking up properties, Jeremiah, and then you're like, I need somebody that's going to help run this kind of day to day. Like, what did that look like?
Yeah, you better believe I need someone to run it. So
Yeah.
this is where you actually make some money in the business. So Diane and her mother owned the storage that I bought in a small town in New Hampshire. And for me, I was up against the challenge, and most investors are, where you're acquiring these smaller facilities in more rural markets, and you don't have a lot of options with management. You're either going to be doing it yourself, managing a part-time or full-time employee. That it's quite a time burden on you. And at this stage of my career, I was saying I got to find an operating partner. And it didn't instantly work out that way, but it was nice that her mother stayed on and managed the asset. But after we worked together for a few years, we felt comfortable working for each other and with each other. And she was an engineer here in Keene, New Hampshire. So she decided I'm done with the 9 to 5, and we kind of teamed up and really wanted to scale this thing. We saw some opportunity, but the main thing is, for a new investor, it's very hard to vet third-party management companies, because while you're growing these individual locations, the cost burden on the asset is so high. So, you just don't, and then a lot of times they're not going to treat it the way that you need it treated in terms of the reporting on the accounting side, or the operations feedback in terms of, managing the managers, knowing your performance on how many calls are coming in. Are we adapting, raising rents as soon as we're full? So all those things, we didn't have it all figured out. We've been going to every single trade show in Vegas every year together. But now it's kind of got into a system where we're really in a rhythm where we could take these over. And our main goal is building a call center now. And that's where we've been doing that here in New Hampshire, and then also scaling it out into the Philippines and having some remote employees. And this is an evolution, and I'm sure we can do, every quarter we can kind of give an update on how this grows.
That'd be awesome.
But yeah, that is our vision for the company, because we're seeing the big operators, the REITs, start to look at this model saying these suburban or tertiary portfolios, there's a lot of yield, there's a lot of return here. There's a good opportunity, but they don't have the remote management model dialed in. None of the 5 really have a protocol or system. So we're on the front end of that. So she can dig into the nuts and bolts of from taking it over to the biggest challenges and how she's trying to build that part of the business. And I'm with her. We really work together a lot, but that is her baby, and she's been growing it. So she can dig into it for new and beginner people, investors.
Yeah, that's what we need to hear. So Diane, thanks again for taking some time, but please, just if you could kind of go into, what does that first step look like? Okay, the property is bought, right? That's the fun part. That's the easy part, I guess, in a way. Now what happens? This is where the work happens.
So day one, yeah. So very different than where we are today. So I'm just going to go back to your example, very first facility. It's coming on soon. Like, you haven't even purchased it yet. So your work actually is going to start before the closing. Diligence and all, you're collecting your items. So operations starts to play a part in that. Usually I get involved about 4 to 6 weeks before the facility comes on. I start working with the seller on getting the tenant information. What software are they using? What software am I going to use? So as a new operator, depending on the size of your facility, there's a lot of different softwares out there. Software in general across the storage business is not where it should be. It's not where other softwares are in other businesses, because it's such a simple industry. I would recommend Easy Storage for anyone who's brand new, starting out with a small to mid-sized location. If it's going to be larger than that, I would recommend probably a Store Edge or something else that can handle a bigger facility. ESS will start to bog down at about 400 plus units. It gets a little slow. It gets a little slower on using the map function and things like that.
Yeah, and that part's critical, right, Diane? I mean, this is like one of the most important parts is that software that people are going to use, right?
Yeah. Yep. Because all your processes are going to, in your training is going to be built around the software. So Jeremiah's heard me say it a million times, and everybody out here in the call center and everyone that's ever worked for me, a million times. Answer. I usually swear. So answer,
You can hear. Go ahead.
answer the damn phone. Right?
Yeah.
So number one, your most important thing is to answer your phone. So I've seen other people new in the business, they get a call center set up. I don't recommend outsourcing call centers because they don't answer the phone. So if you're going to do an outside call center because you don't want to do it yourself or you don't have anybody to work with, test it, right? So if I'm calling that call center and it takes 5 minutes for someone to get on the phone, that call center is not the right call center. It's not the guy you want. You want somebody who's actually answering your calls, because answering the calls more than anything for our locations and our markets, like tertiary, the small outside markets, we started with smaller locations. Someone who's just getting going might be starting with a small location. In those locations, like, answer the phone, because 8 times out of 10, your neighbor, your competitor down the street is not answering the phone, right? They have a voice message like, hey, leave us a message and we'll get back to you during the workday, when those people who want to rent from you on Saturday are ready to rent today on Saturday, right? And your call center, your manager is going to work during the week. So when we started out, it was just my mother and I. As Jeremiah mentioned, I was doing engineering. I was just helping my mom part-time. I helped her set up spreadsheets. We didn't even use software back then. And we just had the phone with us all the time. So we weren't in the office. We've been remote since 1998. We never had an office at our location. But the first location was right down the street from my mom's house. So things that are important to have somebody on site. A lot of people feel like, oh, you hear remote management. Oh, I just set it up and I use a kiosk, or I have a remote call center into the phone. That's great. I never have to go there. I never have to be on site. So that's not true. So there's an on-site component that is absolutely a must for your location. So units need to be unlocked and overlocked. There are no key locks people are getting away from that. But there's also a lot of trash. So people who use storages, especially depending on the market, are coming and leaving a mattress in the middle of the road, right? So your kiosk is not going to go out there and haul that mattress.
Right.
There are times when you're going to do auctions, you have to take a picture of the contents. So the lock needs to be cut off and the unit would be open. You take a photo and then you upload the photo to the auction site. So there's things that have to be done on site. You need somebody on site. It's the maintenance team. We use contractors primarily, but they will just be someone who's just looking for a little bit extra income. They're going there maybe 2 to 4 hours a week, depending on the location. So if it was I was just starting my very first location, then I would get my maintenance guy. That's our first hire at every single location. So whether it's me, myself, operating a small facility myself, I can get those calls on my phone, right? I don't have to be in the office. I don't need a person in the office. Depending on your market, unless it's a really large facility where you really need a presence, like 100,000 square feet plus, then we're doing it remotely. We're managing it remotely. But otherwise, for first timers, answering their phone, again, on their cell phone, or just having a person who's responsible for their cell phone. So when we first started growing, I was like, wow, this is too much for my mom and I need someone else to be answering the phones. And we used the same model. So those people were paid a percentage of the income.
Interesting.
And they were responsible to answer the phone 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. So 8 to 8, 7 days a week. So we were hiring a full-time manager who would answer the phone 12 hours a day, 7 days a week for a small percentage of the income. So on a $10,000 a month facility, it was 4%. It was 4%. So I had a full-time manager 7 days a week for $400 a month. And you say, why would somebody do that? Because on a small facility like that, they're not getting that many calls. There's really not much. There's not much to it. They just have to be, so they could be at the beach, they could be hanging out with their kids, and they just answer the phone when it rings, right? So it's not really a burden on them, except that they have to have their phone. And in today's world, not usually a problem for people that don't have otherwise full-time jobs.
So true.
So we had people that wanted one facility, and as we grew, they're like, hey, I want this to be full-time. So give me more. I'll take more facilities and I'll still do that, answer the phone all the time. We're switching that model. Again, as we grow and as you would grow if you were going to add another facility, maybe what worked for you today when you were small time, just managing that one facility, doesn't work for you when you have 5 facilities. And what works for you when you have 5 doesn't work when you have 10. So it's been constantly evolving. And with our growth rate, it's been every 2 months, right? Like, so here's where we are today. Is what we put in place, the processes we put in place today, going to work for us in 2 months when we've added another 10 facilities. That's
excellent. I want to kind of just dig in a tiny bit here because I think it's important for people to understand. So would you suggest, Diane, that when someone's buying a self-storage facility, because a lot of times people think it's a very passive thing, and I don't think that's so true, right? I think there is still a good amount of work in that day-to-day spot, and I don't want to overstep that. So like, would you say for someone who's new, you may want to have it where it is driving distance, that first one? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
That it would be easier if you want to be involved to learn the business. It would be easier if you could drive there. Even if it's a couple hours away and you're going once a month or twice a month, it would be good for you for learning purposes to go there and be on site, or partner with someone, your friend who told you, hey, buy a storage, this is working out great for me. Go hang out at their location for a couple of days and at least understand what it looks like. Like, what are the struggles that people see, and why do I need that presence, some type of presence on site, right? So maybe the gate malfunctioned, or the internet went out, and whatever it is, like the door is stuck, right? So what's important when you're a renter? One thing would be, have you rented a storage unit before? And if you have, why? Were you moving? Were you getting a divorce? Was there a death in the family? Like really stressful times usually in people's lives, or a new baby is coming, right? So people are looking for storage for stressful reasons. So people are stressed out, and you understanding that and understanding your customer helps you know what's important to those customers as they come into your facility.
No, it's such an interesting thing. Yeah, I don't think people think about that stuff at all. I also think it like, you're right. I think it's important to, number one, like you were saying, you got to answer your phone, because I feel like in those, especially in those times of urgency, these people, that they're going to call somebody else really quickly, and so you don't want to miss that call, right? Absolutely. I mean, that's huge. So yeah, I love that part. And I think there might be a big difference between people's thoughts on, hey, do you want to be an owner operator? Right? Then I think you should go and have something where you can drive to it and understand the business, every single aspect of it. Or do you just want to be an investor and then just give somebody like Jeremiah some, money, and then you can just receive the passive income from that, right? So you kind of have to figure out what it is that you truly want, right? So, okay. So then from that point on, what does it look like next? Like, what are the next steps? So you get it situated, you get the call center situated, or you're taking the phone calls. What's like, what should people be on alert for when they buy that storage facility?
So are you an operator?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you're owning and operating. It's your first location. The first thing we do when we take over a location is call every single tenant. Introduce them, right? So there's going to be, you're introducing them to the new software, if there is software, or new phone number. If you're changing the phone number, we recommend not to take over the phone number that's there, but to call every single tenant, introduce them, update their payment information, because credit cards pretty much never transfer over, right? Wow. So even if you're taking on a facility that's using the same software that you're going to use, they will not transfer credit card information. So if you have a 600 unit facility and you just say, hey, we're going to transfer at the first of the month, they're going to get all this income coming in on day one because everybody's on automatic payment, which is what you want. That money's not coming in unless you've called everybody and gotten their credit card number.
Have you learned that the hard way?
Yes.
Good. Well, not good, but I mean, that's how you learn, right? So that's great.
We learned that from switching softwares.
Oh, okay.
Because the credit cards get encrypted, most of the time you can't even switch your own credit card information from one software to another. That's really the most painful part, payment-wise, of doing the transfer, is collecting that payment information. And you absolutely want everybody on automatic payment. So pay the credit card fees. As you grow, you can negotiate lower rates, but use credit cards and get people on automatic payment.
Is it almost at a point, Diane, where it's like you can't even accept cash, or do you guys still accept like money orders? How does that work? Or
we rarely accept cash, and we only accept cash in our corporate office here in Keene. So people from facilities that are doing a big payoff or trying to avoid auction may come here on exception and with permission, but may come here to our corporate call center office to make a payment, but it's very rare. Right in our introduction letter, we tell people we don't accept cash.
Got
And
it.
that is a change, especially in a lot of these smaller markets.
Right.
In a state like Maine, where people just are against technology in general, they're like, so still people will mail in money orders or a check, but pretty rare. So we really target at least 70% to be on automatic payment.
Okay. That's excellent. So from that point on, once so that's a big thing, is making sure that you're talking directly to the current tenants that are in there and making sure that there's a transfer over, and that takes some work. I mean, is that something that is done in-house always? Can you hire that out? Because that sounds like that's tedious.
If you were hiring another manager or management company, they would take care of it for you. But if you're doing it yourself, it is a lot of work. So plan on, anytime we take on a new facility, we call it onboarding, and we have a person designated just for onboarding. That onboarding team really owns that facility for the first 6 weeks. So they're responsible to reach out and call everybody, call every single tenant, make sure they have updated addresses, contact information, payment information. The intro letter goes out. We usually, in this market for the last year and a half, has been fantastic for storage. We're buying places that their rates are lower than the market rates. So we are introducing ourselves with a rate increase. So you're not always the favorite person. You're not like, we love the new owners who came in and introduced themselves with a rate increase.
Right.
So the onboarding team does all that, relays all that information with the intro letter, emails, texts, and a phone call. So we do all of those for every single tenant.
Yeah, there's going to be a rate increase, but at the same time, your service is going to go way up, right? So it's going to be seamless. It's going to be simpler. You're obviously, if like when you're taking something down, when you guys are buying something that maybe doesn't have like it's secured, or there's no internet access. I mean, those are big deals for people, right? So what does that look like? Okay, so let's say you take it over from a very much mom and pop kind of operation, and what's the next step? So are you immediately like paving the roads? Are you immediately putting up fences? Are you is it right away cameras? Like, what does that look like?
It depends on the location, but generally, yes. So we will also include that if we know it's in the plan for that location. We'll put that in the intro letter. Like, unfortunately, your rates are way below market. We are increasing. However, our security cameras are being installed soon. We have paving in the plans for spring. We will put that right in our letter so that they know they're going to get a benefit from the rate increase. Just not accepting cash. So we do have that very small percentage that's like, oh, I always pay cash. But the rest of them like, oh, thank you so much. I don't have to schedule time with Billy Bob to come down here when he's available to make my payment in cash.
I believe that's probably the majority when those things occur, right? They're thankful for that. They're like, oh, I didn't even know I could do this. No, I don't even think about it, right?
Yeah.
That's
the big thing, Marty, with the listeners. Like, it's a good entry level in the commercial real estate where the missing piece is the operations, where it's tricky to run these small assets and actually justify making some money and spending your time. It's a big investment for someone that's starting out to learn it and buy it and deal with all this. But what we're looking to do, and the listeners out there, is if you see in upstate New York and all over Pennsylvania and all over the country, there's all these little facilities, right, that possibly have some extra land where you can expand. A lot of investors, they can work with these mom and pops, get them at a very fair price, and then make these improvements and sell them at a really good profit, or joint venture with us where we could add them in and actually they can contribute the asset to our funds, where they're going to still get a lot of passive income. They don't have to deal with a lot of the day-to-day. And they can actually create value if they buy it at a good price and they make the improvements, or they buy it, even if they find the opportunity and send it to us, we're happy to pay out fees as well. But it's just something where it's really a new horizon with the ability to have technology actually scale, where it's not every single thing that you can do technologically where it's automated, but you can now at this stage with auto debit credit card, with Google AdWords, people finding you, with the call center routing calls and being able to talk to people immediately, and then having a remote maintenance man cover multiple locations, your costs can be down. So now all these little locations can be profitable. So I want that to go out there to everybody, that if you see these old ratty looking facilities, as long as they're not old buildings that are converted into storage and they're typical, built in the 80s or 90s, those typical metal building storage structures, we can go in there, paint them, we can get them all updated and get the doors fixed, the latches. And it's a very easy turnaround. So, I hope people out there that want to break into it, they can take that and, if they can actually create opportunity for themselves, and we're happy to work with them.
Yeah, that's huge. I think you just even saying that you guys are open to those sort of partnerships, and that gets people, motivated to maybe look at stuff that they probably wouldn't, knowing that they have a partner potentially. So one of the things you said, Jeremiah, that I think is really important, and I think it's kind of looked over a bit, is the reviews and the SEO and the Google ads of these self-storage facilities. How much of a factor is that? Do you think that, again, in a competitive market, right now, I know we're talking some secondary markets, but in competitive markets, people do have choices. And a lot of times they're going to take out their smartphone and they're going to Google self-storage, right? So how critical is it to be there, and not just be there, but really have a reputation or a positive reputation that's going to get someone to, make that decision to call you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we're evolving, we're learning this process along the way, but this is the evolution of the industry and all industries, right? That's how everyone's finding everybody. So really it's two things when you're buying storage. Number one is still don't discount the importance of visibility and accessibility. So you still want, if you're going to build a location, your first one, or you're going to buy a location, I get it. I mean, you can definitely find everything online, but you still need to factor in that you need frontage, you need visibility, you need easy access to get in there. Because I think even on the public storage or the REITs calls, I think they're only getting 30 or 40% online rentals. So I mean, still a lot of people are calling off the sign, and that's changing. And I have to confirm that stat, but at the end of the day, so visibility and convenience, I mean, that is number one for people. But then right behind it is going to be your online presence, number two, where they can actually get a hold of you, they can rent the unit online. They can, easily dial your number off the app, off the listing, Google listing. But to your question there, I think with people, they really they need that hands-on presence. They won't do everything online yet. It's not there. So yeah, for us, it's about, we are in these small markets where we can win rather easily. I mean, we were buying a templated website with at basic, $100, $200 a month SEO and AdWord campaign. And we were the top of the market in like 4 to 5 months or 3 months. So the competition really hasn't caught up in some of the small markets, but it's coming. And especially when the REITs come to these markets, and they're coming, you got to be ready for that. We don't have all the answers on it. We're trying to understand that world, but it's really targeting the towns around you that people are going to be coming in from. And then really targeting those keywords and storage near me, all that good stuff that people are going to be looking for. So that's something that we're learning, and we could probably share down the road.
Okay, great. Because I think those are probably quick wins for people. I think that's like a really simple added value thing for if you have a really nice location and you can't find it online, right? And it doesn't have a website or something like that. That's a really simple win to just immediately increase probably the value.
You got to just do your Google business listing right away, right? You got to do your AdWord campaign, do at least $200 a month, just get it going, and then get your website obviously dialed in so people can rent. I mean, if you don't have that going, you're throwing away the business.
Yeah, I think people don't think about that part, and I know how important it is. Okay, so that's a really good start for people who are looking to buy, and once they do have that property, now the operations. Is there anything that people might miss, Diane? Is there something that like, hey, be careful about these things? Like, what are all the other parts of this business that people don't always think about?
Yeah, I just want to add on to the advertising, because, hey, they might say, well, I'm already full, so it's not important to me or my location because I'm right in the center of, we're in Keene here. So Keene is a town where a lot of small towns come into. So even though they don't live here, they might be working here. So it's still convenient for them to have a location here. But even though you're full, you still want to advertise, because then you can raise your rates, right? Because if you're turning people away, it means your rates aren't high enough, right? So when you advertise, you can demand higher rates because you're getting those calls and answering them that other people aren't getting because you have good advertising. So even if you're full, it means your rates aren't high enough. And you can demand a higher rate. So once that next person, you raise your rates and they help two or three people move out, then you raise your rates and those still rent. You raise your rates again, and that advertising allows you to keep pushing the rates.
Yeah, I think people forget. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really important. That point right there, that's the evolution of the small operator playing in the world that the REITs consistently play in, right? Where you revenue management is the key term that anyone in storage needs to understand, because you're maximizing revenue on every unit every month. This is what dynamic pricing, being able to change your pricing month by month, is what the large institutional players, the private equity firms and the REITs, the public companies, this is what they love about storage, because you can continually adapt to the marketplace. So our transition into that over the last 4 years, and there's a whole science between just always changing your pricing. But at the end of the day, just highlighting to the listener that if you're 100% full, you're not maximizing revenue. And people, a lot of mom and pop owners, they just don't understand that point where with good marketing, what Diane mentioned there, is you have a consistent flow of leads that people need to store. And she mentions to me on our reports, about 70% of our customers are pretty much there for over a year or plus, some up to 10 years. Wow. The other 30%, they're constantly revolving. But what you want to make sure is you're not leaving money on the table where that older tenant is not paying market rent. You have that consistent, steady inflow of the other 30% that want to pay the market rent, that they need the product. There's no reason that you take it off, you're out of your inventory to give someone a discount. You have to charge the fair market rents. And that's really helpful for us as an operating company. Why we took it in-house is third-party managers they really aren't evaluating it, or if they're full, they're going to get their management fee. There's no reason to really to get new people in and turn over other people and deal with a rate increase. But for us, that's a huge function. And what she pushes it really well, where when we're full and we have our projected gross potential income, right? We'll look at what is the fair market rents. So for us, we love markets that are $13, $14, $15 annual rent per square foot on our revenue. And we look at that and say, this is our projected market rent. But once we hit that, and we have been over the last 18 months, just due to the crazy demand from after COVID, she takes it a step further and takes that street rate and raises it again. So you'll never actually reach your highest potential on the rents, because she's going to raise that to $16 on the rent. And then that's where we get market feedback, where from her staff or even the reporting, you're going to see we're not leasing rents. We have to drop it. We're not leasing units. We have to drop the rents now back to where we need to go, or people are leaving at that price. And you could do that rather quickly, because everything is on a month-to-month lease in the storage game.
That's so good. I think that a couple of things is, I think people forget that you're actually running a business here. This is not just you're buying real estate. Yes, but it's a lot of business here, a lot of business. You have to be on top of this stuff and constantly that art of raising it. But you also have to make sure that you're not going too crazy. So you have to constantly be adjusting and looking at that number. And like you said, Jeremiah, you don't necessarily want to be at 100%, because that means you're losing out on money on the table. There's money on the table that you're missing out on. But at the same time, that should get people so excited about storage, is because if you're doing it properly, it's never gonna reach its full potential. So you don't really know. It's constantly every year going to get better and better and better, especially as things of our culture continue to stay the same. Buy a ton of things and you don't know where to put it. So, okay, well, this is
Marty. The flip side is, though, the markets that have a lot of no barriers to entry, where there's a lot of cheaper commercial land and you can build storage easily, down south or that in Texas. You got to be careful though, because that's when it doesn't get better. There's in that Dallas market, when I first started, I looked at that, and they have these huge expansion cycles where when the market's hot, tons of storage comes online. So it's not only a reflection of people's demand, it's supply on the other side. So we like this. It doesn't look sexy, these markets up in the Northeast or even where you're from, where, there's small towns. You're not going to have tons of traffic. You're lucky if you can get 10 or 20,000 cars by each day. That's a great spot, and you're next to some commercial locations. like a Walmart or a Dollar General or a Tractor Supply, that's going to draw traffic in front of your site. But most importantly, you want to make sure there's not a million other commercial pieces of land next to you that you can buy for 120 grand an acre. And there's no restrictions to building storage where it's in a permitted use and you don't even need to get a special use permit. So people can just come in there and build tons of it. So it's just being aware of that, though. So once you've already positioned yourself and you get in at a good cost basis and you start leasing it up, and in these markets, you don't know where the rent's going because we don't have the big competitive REITs in there. I mean, when we enter markets that are right on the fringes of Boston or in Hartford or some of the other larger MSAs, you're going to see where the standard is. The REITs are always going to be at the high standard. So, we're going to see where they kind of tapping out because they have algorithms. They spend tens of millions of dollars on AI to have that dynamic pricing where they're creating concessions and discounts, and the name of the game is get people in the unit, and then it's a nuisance to get out. Get them in, and you're auto debiting on credit card, and they're going to assume to upcharge you on auto debiting or charging you for insurance or any other extra items, and then getting you on that auto pay, and then you don't leave. So we're just taking that same model and keeping it more of a customer service oriented, friendly business in these small communities, but then implementing the revenue management where, we're testing the market and seeing how high you can go. And then you got to go the other direction, right? I mean, we're not the only game in town. There'll be other competitors that come in, and then you got to drop the rents and adapt accordingly. But if you can position yourself now and get in at a good cost basis, it's not going to get cheaper. You're not going to be able to build storage for 20 or 30% cheaper moving forward. Inflation's real. Materials costs are continually going up. I mean, steel leveled out now. We're buying our buildings. When we started, with Diane, it was $10, $11, $12 a square foot. And now it's $22, $23, $24 a square foot.
Wow.
So and it's not going back down. So asphalt went up again this quarter. Rates went up on borrowing. We just the other day, rate hike.
Yep.
So you got to get in, people ask, when's a good time to get in storage? Is it oversaturated? Did we miss the boat or should I wait for prices to come down? For us, it's like, no, we buy right, we stay disciplined, we build right, we get in at, if it's with land included, $75, $85 a foot, even up to $100 a foot, depending on your revenue and where you're located. Get in now. And as long as you don't buy on super thin margins where you can't handle 20 or 25% of your tenants leaving and you needing to, lower rates and releasing it up, then you're going to weather the storm. And over the life of it, right, if you look at real estate over the last 100 years, I mean, you're going to get that long-term appreciation. So for us, it's just like, do it now, get in at a good cost. And then over time, weather the storms. It's a great recession-resistant asset. And then you're going to make it out of it. But it could get rocky. This isn't just an easy asset class where you just buy it at whatever price and you raise rents and it's all going to work.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think if people re-listen to that, it's packed full of information that I think is very pertinent, especially when you were talking about there. You got to also be aware that, like in those other southern markets, like the Dallas that you're saying, you can't just build stuff. You got to look at the competition. And I think that actually probably transfers pretty good over to the next episode, Jeremiah, where we were going to talk about picking markets and what you're looking at, right? So why don't we leave it at that? Diane, it was a pleasure having you on. I thank you so much for everything that you just brought to the table. I guess the next thing would be the next episode about picking markets. Jeremiah, do you have anything else you wanted to add in? Or Diane, please.
I think for us, we want to share how we scale this thing. And I think there's a lot of operators in that range where you buy one or two and they realize, wow, this is a good business. But then it's like she mentioned, it's a different game after you get 5 or 10 or then 50, so it's just something where we're growing as a company and learning and we're forging ahead. There is no template to do it. So ideally every 3 to 6 months, we'll check back in here and share some of the things that maybe help make the business more efficient. And we're forging ahead to give best customer service, but also keeping our operating costs low. It's a constant balance. So that's my share.
Absolutely. I'll just touch on the recession resistance of storage. So we talk about recession resistant, the demand will change. So just people who are new in the business and are looking at it, be aware that the demand changes as the markets change. So instead of people coming in and wanting the biggest unit you've got available, And some operators are like, hey, it'd be so easy if I just had all 10 by 20s and people just park their cars there for winter, we're easy. But don't discount those small units, because those small units are your biggest bang for your dollar per square foot, typically. And during recessions, you're going to get huge demand for those small units as people try to cut back.
Yes, that is a great nugget. I think people don't think about that. Okay.
Yeah, we're seeing it now, Marty. Yeah, it was surprising when Diane gave me that feedback just the last 60 days that we had these facilities where there's lots of 10 by 30s, even 10 by 40s. And those were when we're in a recession, right? I mean, when a year ago or 6 months ago, people were just spending money, just hand over fist, regardless. But we're already seeing it, even on the storage side, saying, nope, we're going to pack things in and put it nice and tight and give us the cheapest rate you can get. So there's a whole thing when we talk about layout and how we're going to design these things, but it's important to know that.
Well, and that should be its own episode, right? I mean, really, we could really dive into that. And Diane, that we were going to need you for that one. But guys, I wanted to be cognizant of Diane and Jeremiah's time. So that was the episode. If you guys go on, please rate us, tell your friends, your family, send us an envelope, just do something for us. And we're going to continue to give back. So thanks, guys. We'll see you next time. Yep.
See you, man.
For more information on commercial real estate investing, go to patriotholdings.com. Thanks for listening to Finding Your Edge.